Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world.
I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world.
Truth be told,
Truth be told,
I never graduated from college,
I never graduated from college,
and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation.
this is the closest I've ever got to a college graduation.
Today, I want to tell
Today,
you 3 stories from my life.
I want to tell you 3 stories from my life.
That's it.
That's
No
it.
big deal.
No big deal.
Just 3 stories.
Just 3 stories.
The first story
The first story
is about connecting the dots.
is about connecting the dots.
I dropped out of Reed College
I dropped out Reed College
after the first 6 months,
after
but then stayed around as a drop-in for another. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a
but then stayed around
drop-in for another 18
for another 18 months,
months or so before I really
18 months or so before I really quit.
quit. So why'd I drop out?
So why did I drop out?
It started before I was born.
It started before I was born.
My biological mother
My biological mother
was a young, unwed
was a
graduate
young,
student, and she
unwed
decided to
graduate
put me up. Biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to
and she decided to
put me up for
put
adoption.
me up for adoption.
She felt very
She felt very
strongly that I should be adopted
that I should be
by
adopted
college graduates.
by college
So everything was all
graduates.
set
So everything
for me to be
was-
strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates. So everything was all set
so
for me to be
everything
adopted
was
at birth.
all set
by a lawyer, college graduates. So everything was all set for me to be adopted at
for me to be adopted
birth by a lawyer
adopted
and his
by
wife.
a lawyer and his wife.
Except that when I popped out,
except that when I popped out,
they decided at the last
decided at the last
minute that they really wanted
that they really want the girl.
a girl.
Wow.
So my parents, who
So
were
my
on a waiting
parents-
list,
Who are on a waiting list
got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him? An unexpected baby boy. Do you want him? We've got an
They got
unexpected
an
baby boy.
expected baby
Do you
boy.
want him?"
They want him.
They said,
They said,
"Of course."
of course.
My biological mother found out
My
later
biological mother
that my
found
mother
out
had
later
never
that my
graduated
mother
from
had
college.
never graduated from
Found
college.
out later that my mother had never graduated from
My mother
college,
had never graduated
and that my
college.
father had
And
never
my
graduated
father
from high
had
school.
never graduated from high school.
She refused to sign the
refused
final
to sign
adoption
The
papers.
final adoption papers.
She only relented a
She
few months
only
later
a few
when my
months later,
parents
when my
promised
parents
that I would go
that
to
I
college.
would go to college.
This was the start.
This is was the
In my
start
life.
in my life.
And 17 years
And
later,
7 years
I
later,
did go to college.
I did go to college.
But I naively chose
But
a
I never
college
chose
that was
a college
almost as
that was
expensive as
almost as
Stanford.
expensive as Stanford.
And all of my
And
working
all of
class
my
parents'
working-class
savings
parents'
were being
savings were
spent on
being
my
spent
college
on my
tuition.
college tuition.
After 6 months,
6 months,
I couldn't see the
I
value
couldn't
in
see
it.
the value.
I had no idea what I wanted
I
to
had
do
no
with my
idea what
life,
I want to do.
and no idea how college
and
was
no
going to
idea
help me
how
figure it
was
out.
going to how to figure
And
it
here
out.
I was, spending all college was going to help me figure it out.
Figure it out.
And here I
here
was,
I was
spending all the money
Spend
my
all the
parents
money
had saved their
parents
entire
had
life.
saved their entire life.
So I decided to drop out
So I
and
decided
trust
to
that it
drop
would
out
all
and
work
trust
out
that
okay.
It would all work out okay.
It was pretty scary at the
It was
time,
pretty
but looking
scary.
back, hey. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best
one of the best
decisions I ever made.
decisions I ever made.
The minute I dropped out,
The minute I dropped out,
I could stop taking the
I could stop taking the
required classes that didn't
required classes that didn't
interest
interest
me.
me,
and begin
and began dropping
in on the ones
on the
that
ones
looked far more
that
interesting.
looked far more
Dropping in on the ones
that
that looked far more interesting.
I looked far more interesting.
It wasn't all romantic.
It wasn't all romantic.
I didn't have a dorm room,
I didn't have a dorm room,
so I slept on the floor.
so I slept
Or
on
in
the
friends'
floor
rooms.
in friends' rooms.
I returned Coke bottles for the
I returned Coke bottles
5-cent deposits
for the 5-cent
to buy food with. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to
for the 5-cent deposit
buy food with.
by who with,
And I would walk the
and I'd walk
7 miles across town every Sunday night
every Sunday night
to get would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday
every
night
Sunday night
to get one good meal
to get one good
a
meal
week at the Hare Krishna
at the
temple.
park.
To get one good meal a week at the Hare
To get one good meal a week at the Hare
Krishna
Krishna
temple.
temple.
I loved it.
I loved it.
And much of what I stumbled
And much
into
of those
by I loved it.
I loved it.
And
And
much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless. By following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you
Let
one
me give you
example.
one example.
Reed College
Reed
at that
College
time
at that
offered
time
perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. On every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography, space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture. Artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture. Artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture. And I found it fascinating. Not historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture. And I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. No personal computer would have them. It's likely that no personal computer would have them.